Alright guys, my name's Chris Black. Today I am presenting for you guys, but I'm also going to be live on the radio show that I host here in Anchorage, Alaska. I've got a show called Philosophies of Fitness and Health. I thought it'd be a great opportunity for me to just present the idea of big data. I'm an MPH student. This is my last semester. Right now I'm finishing my practicum, and so this information here makes a lot of sense. The chapter I'm on, chapter 23, is on big data. And so I'm going to just go ahead and go over a little overview here, and then at the end I'll go over the topic, which is big data. So the reason I chose this class was because I thought that media communications in general, technological communication in general, is very important for us to be able to teach the public and to reach the public. And the more that we're in sync with the public and what they're using. Okay guys, welcome to Philosophies of Fitness and Health. Today we've got a really special topic. It is on big data. So let's start first with what is data? Well, dictionary.com defines data as facts and statistics collected together for reference or analysis. In computing, it's the quantities, characteristics, or symbols on which operations are performed by a company, being stored or transmitted in the form of electrical signals and recorded on magnetic, optical, or mechanical recording media. Lastly, in philosophy, it is things known or assumed as fact, making the basis of reasoning or calculation. Now that all sounds reasonable, and if we can go back to the Latin origin of the word data, which is datum, then datum provides the definition of a piece of information, a fixed starting point of a scale or operation, and an assumption or premise which inferences can be drawn. At the center, data relies on the previous definition left by datum. We can see in data we're referring to computers. This hints that the definition of data is not fixed. It certainly wasn't a word created in the last 30 to 40 years, since it was brought into existence in the late 17th century. So that means that data is a fluid concept, although the origin stays true. Now that we've defined data, what's this thing we call big data? Well, big data is a term that describes the large volume of data, both structured and unstructured, that inundates a business on a day-to-day basis. So we may define big data as an in-field shorthand that refers to the sheer mass of data produced daily by and within global computer networks at a pace that far exceeds the capacity of a current database and software programs to organize and process. Maybe you notice that you search something on Google, and then you start to see ads on Facebook for it. Does that happen to anybody out there? Certainly happened to me. In fact, it was funny. I looked up something on Google recently, and literally as soon as I opened my Facebook app, I saw an ad right there for it. So that's an example there of business analytics from a business using it to market a concept that you know that they know that you're interested in. So when you use Facebook, Instagram, or Snapchat, you contribute to data sets of big data. When you take a picture with your smartphone, your phone, through all its sensors and online actions with the digital image, add to the pool of stored data. When you add a video to YouTube, when you do a search on Google, when you auto-communicate your location through its wireless connected system, and when you comment on someone's blog, you're contributing to an ever-growing pool of data. More data has been released or created since 2013 than in the entire history of the human race prior to that time. Let's repeat that. There's been more data created since 2013 than in the entire history of the human race prior to that time. How can we put that in a contextual example? Well, the book does this well, the book that I'm referring to. Let's think about the letter I, which stands for the most important thing in the universe. Ourselves, right? I'm just kidding. However, it's a good place to start. You are a single character, such as I, is 1 byte. A byte is a unit of memory size. Now, a word is 10 bytes. A short text message would be 100 bytes. A few paragraphs would be a kilobyte, 1,000 bytes in other words. As you can see, the more words, the more bytes. How about uploading a low-resolution picture, for example? Well, that would be 100 kilobytes. A 30-second studio radio commercial would be 500 kilobytes. So you can imagine how many kilobytes we're creating already, or more. A high-resolution photo will be 2 megabytes. We haven't even hit gigabytes, which equal 1 trillion bytes. Then there's terabytes, petabytes, exabytes, zettabytes, and yottabytes. An exabyte is 1,000 petabytes, and 5 exabytes is all the words ever spoken by humans up to the year 2000. A zettabyte, which is 1,000 exabytes, is the total amount of data produced in 2010. That's 1,000 times the data produced in 1999. So as we can see, the term big data is no joke. Even more fascinating is that it is constantly growing in volume, velocity, and variety. First of all, where is the information stored? Secondly, why? Well, first, data is stored in two ways. One option is that a company may own the hardware, creating a data center, and store the data and pay its own company employees to pay its own people to maintain the data system and control the data. The second option is the same. It's just that you have outsourced other people to maintain and to collect that data. Either way, someone's collecting and maintaining a lot of data. In most cases, if the data is outsourced to be maintained, it's collected and stored in a cloud. To clear things up, a cloud is referred to the practice of using a network of remote servers based on the internet to store, manage, and process data, rather than a local server or personal computer. So now we're asking ourselves, why store this data? Can you imagine the amount of filing cabinets that we're neglecting by using this technology? Well, the reason why is because it's useful. This data has value, and data mining to identify trends and patterns is a fast-growing standard business practice. Remember the Google search that led to the Facebook ads? There's an example of how businesses can use every move to learn about you. The application that are on your phone are recording data, giving to an ever-expanding larger Internet of Things. Since practically everything downloaded to your phone, iPad, Kindle, and computer is collecting data, it's important that we, as consumers, are informed about how the data is being used and be aware of the privacy issues involved. But remember, it's not the amount of data that's important, it's what organizations do with the data that matters. Big data can be analyzed for insights that lead to better decisions and strategic business moves. In 2012, big data was recognized for the first time for its importance. It would be by a man named Steve Lohr. Lohr gave credit to a man named John Meshi, a chief scientist at Silicon Graphics in the 1990s, for discovering and expressing the concept of big data. Unlike many other communication technologies, big data is not one particular product category, set of tools, or technological developments. Rather, it is the accumulated data that is in essence a byproduct of the emergence of digital communication, networking, and storage over the past few decades. It is also important to understand that many big data databases are actually composed of numerous separate databases that are linked together by some key variable, some unique identifier of a person, company, or other record. So how is big data changing the landscape of business, government, and healthcare? Well, for healthcare, big data can be used to target interventions that patients could most benefit from. Cooperation between government and healthcare systems could drive better access to and use of healthcare data. The compatibility of medical records could improve connection between healthcare providers and improve access to healthcare records for patients. Another example for how big data is changing business would be Netflix. Netflix uses data to follow trends and improve their customers' experience. Some notable data points for Netflix paid attention to were program viewership, types of content being watched, devices being used by customers to watch Netflix, and viewing patterns such as length of their watching or whether customers completed the whole show or movie. There's also notable changes in the government and education sector, increasingly in blended and online environments for learning, such as Blackboard here. Okay, we're back on philosophies of fitness and health, back from that short break, and we're still talking about big data. So just a little overview, we're talking about big data and the way that we are starting to increase the amount of data being created through things such as social media, using Instagram, using Facebook, using Google search queries, your smartphone, even your location based on GPS. All this stuff is adding to this large amount of data that's being used for very valuable information based on your behavior for marketing, businesses, and also those that just want to know your behavior in general. In fact, I've even seen schools using it. Looking at programs, for example, all of a sudden you have 4 or 5 different MPH programs coming up. Or, for example, you want to get into med school, and you've been looking up how to get into med school. Now all of a sudden you got 4 or 5 programs showing up that's talking about med school and applications, and maybe they're going to waive the MCAT. And so there's like all types of ways that people are being used, and it's not too difficult really to catch on to. I'm sure that a lot of people have noticed this. They probably just didn't know the name for it, which is essentially big data analytics, and using this data set with statistical software, for example, in order to interpret and evaluate behavior so that marketers can have better ideas of how the behavior of the public really is, right, and what people are interested in. And you even see this maybe trending, right? You see on Google or on Facebook, certain things are trending. Well, that information is being sent somewhere, and something is analyzing it, and then it gives the nomination of being trending on that topic, right, based on the search query and the amount of people who are commenting and so on and so forth. And so we know that this is something that's happening. A lot of times we aren't sure how it's happening or if it's happening to us, but for the most part it is. And so who are the big players in this world of data mining, if you will? Well, IBM and Oracle are 2 of the largest companies involved in the big data business, as far as the models go. And the IBM reports that more than 50% of the U.S. population owns a smartphone, which I almost thought it was more, to be honest. But that's at least 50%, and that 10 billion mobile devices are expected to be in use by 2020. That's only 2 years from now. And so further, 294 billion emails are sent every day, and there's over 1 billion Google searches every day, and trillions of sensors and monitors tracking and communicating with each other, generating real-time data for the Internet of Things. So Oracle suggests, which is one of those companies, that by 2020, all industries will roll out Internet of Things initiatives, which essentially means connecting all the Internet together through different Internet as far as the applications. And you've seen this, the interconnectivity. Maybe you see that you connect through Facebook. When you try and get an application, you can sign in through Facebook. That's Internet of Things. That's connecting things so that everything is generating data together and sharing data as well. And so that's a $4.6 million spent in the public sector just on that, which is creating this Internet of Things initiative. $1.9 trillion in logistics will be spent, and $326 billion in retail, right? So further, manufacturing is expected to invest $140 billion, and telematics $22 billion. So these numbers, these values that I'm talking about, are which industries are going to really invest in this Internet of Things, as well as the big data mining. And so you can see things like manufacturing, for example, logistics. These are all going to be tracking you at some point, and that makes sense. It almost seems like that's happening already. but they're going to invest even more by 2020. So the Oracle report says 50% of Internet of Things activity is centered in manufacturing, transportation, smart cities, and consumer products. So exactly like what I was saying. And that Internet of Things will account for 4.4 trillion gigabytes of the data in the digital universe by the year 2020. Now, we talked about what gigabytes are, and we know that 1 trillion gigabytes is an exabyte. So that's 4 exabytes right there. We talked about how big that was. It was encompassed the scope of the entire amount of words spent or given or said by humans all the way up until pretty recent. And so, anyway, the more than 2.6 billion smartphones worldwide are considered a marketer's dream, of course, right? Because the more that we have, the more that they're getting data, right? And everything you do, whether it's watching TV or interacting with applications or websites or Facebook, this all creates more data. And that's more data for them to analyze, which helps distinguish between what consumers say they do and what they really do, right? So for a long time, we've had these hypothesis testing. We've guessed trends, but usually not until they evolve. And this big data is really going to change the way things are by being able to predict trends before they really emerge as far as mainstream. Further, it actually tells us what people are actually doing. And so if someone has the hunch that maybe 80s clothes is coming back, well, if we look at the Google search queries or we look at Amazon products and we see that no one's purchasing any of those types of clothing, well, then we know that most likely that's not going to happen. But if we started seeing those things coming back, we could get ahead of the curve as a manufacturing company or a retail company and produce those products so that we could be first as far as in demand. You know, you come back with a retro and people would be all over it, right? And so, for example, TV programs. We already know that things like Netflix is using this information to make a better selection for you as you search. If you like this show, then you might be interested in this show. You've seen this before when you look on Netflix if you have it. And that's only going to become more sharp. So Google and Amazon are really the two major big data companies at this time. And it's definitely a part of your life. In fact, I can even show you how. Google proves it. So Google is transparent when it comes to disclosure, even if you may not be concerned about how they're using your online behavior to target you with advertising. So in their online support page, Google reminds you that as you browse the internet, read email, shop online, or do similar online activities, you will notice advertisements for items and content based on previous searches. So Google uses tools like DoubleClick and AdSense, but essentially all their apps, from Gmail to Chrome to YouTube, track your behaviors and your interests in some way. So every time you do a Google search, while logged in to your Gmail account, Google keeps track of your progress and your searches, and their tools connect advertisers with your interests. So Google gives users and their tool, Google gives users a means of controlling how data about them is used in Google Dashboard. There you can view almost everything Google knows about you and manage your privacy settings. So if you're interested in that, you can see what maybe you've been searching. It's like a long list of everything you've done. If you don't want other people to see it, there's a privacy setting there you can turn on, but assume it's on to begin with. And so that's kind of the point. So that is it as far as the philosophy of fitness and health goes today. I'm going to go ahead and put us on a little bit of commercial break, and I'll be back in just a little bit. Okay, so we are done with that as far as the radio show goes. I've got only a few more minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and ask the question here. As big data grows, how can we expect to be able to analyze the larger data sets If your answer is an algorithmic software based in statistics, what advancements in that field do you see to accommodate increases in data mining? Thank you for listening. I know there's a few mistakes. I had to make a few changes, especially since I've got time that I have to do this on. But I hope you enjoyed the presentation. If you have questions, just go ahead and leave it in Blackboard.